that all this free energy association stuff popped up. What I was arrested for in that circumstance was traffic fine. No fine for driving uninsured. I guess I just got the fuel pump fixed on a car, kind of a lemon of a car. Like the receipt was maybe 3 or 4 days before that for a fuel pump. Car wasn't working properly, so I had it towed out to Sherwood Park, and I've been working on it at the Silent Air manufacturing plant out there, because they had a shop, they had air tools, that sort of thing. So I was on my lunch break at work. I was kind of lurching this car around the parking lot, right? And it's kind of like a industrial area, very similar to the end of Hyes Road here. And I lurched through a stop sign, and I hadn't like re-registered the vehicle since it had stopped running. So I had gone past my time to pay on that, having been in school and not working for that time when the fee came up. It was a matter of a couple of weeks. And that prompts in Alberta jail time. No trial, no anything. Either you sort of pay it right now, or you go to jail. I didn't get the pay it right now option. They just took me to the 4th floor of the Edmonton Remand facility straight away. So because I couldn't pay my own, I didn't have access to my telephone, my bank, nothing, right? Who remembers cell phone numbers? I was doing yoga in a park, by the way. My neighbor was concerned because I've been so quiet last little while, and I left my phone just sort of on the picnic table. I was ignoring it. Matt was like, "Hey John, answer your phone," and I'm like, "No, I just leave me alone, man." And so he called an ambulance. He had called an ambulance because the reason why he wanted me to answer my phone was that my mom had called him because she was worried about me, and they'd had some conversation, and he was just had the best of intentions, but yeah, people were worried about me because they hadn't seen me, right? Like, I hadn't been at work, been going to class, sitting in front of a computer, and then all of a sudden I'm popping up on YouTube with like new ideas this time. So when they called the ambulance, the police beat the ambulance there, and picked up this traffic warrant. I called my boss, used my banked hours, and I was out in like 3 days or something. But that wasn't too bad, because that wasn't, that would be the same for anybody, I guess, who's just behind on their payments. But that's not the premise that they asked for. They asked for a 30-day psychiatric assessment, and they got it. No trial, no crime, no allegation of any of that in less than 20 hours on a long weekend. No police reports, none of that. They got it based on the disclosure, based on the statements of the responding officers, all responding to the same. Literally, this guy's video was just on YouTube with shootings in Las Vegas, Sandy Hook, first thing. Just typing in John M. So when they checked me into the Edmonton Remand facility, it wasn't my first time. I think that the traffic fine combined with the tracking ID difference on that cell phone. I think it's the equivalent of almost like a debt warrant, in that like the registry in Alberta might know which fines haven't been paid. They might all come out on a particular day. It was funny. It happened. It was June 7th, and then July 28th, same year. And so none of it was really documented properly, because when I was taken into the Edmonton remand facility, they had me scheduled to be there for 30 days. Unbeknownst to them, I just had my buddy come down and pay the fine. And so I think that they thought that they messed up when I was back, like somebody had dropped the ball and let someone out that they shouldn't have, because there was no charge. There was mischief, right? But who shows up for 30 days for mischief, right? So they thought that I'd somehow like breached a recognizance condition or something, because trying to like get the information, the disclosure from the Crown Prosecutor's Office. Don't forget, I still have a criminal charge of mischief, which sounds funny until, your dad's sick in BC, and you're not allowed to leave the province without like a parole officer. So the one thing that did work out in terms of staying in jail was that there's like the fourth floor of the Edmonton remand facility has some of the safest cells in the province, I guess, in terms of people who think they're suicidal or whatever. So their psychiatrist recognized me and knew that I'd like been there on a different unit a few weeks before, and recognized my face. And I got to talk to him for 10 minutes, which is the one thing that I never got to do. I was never asked a question. And so after talking to him, he's like, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. And then on the Monday, the Tuesday, it was a long weekend. So I was arrested on the Thursday, which was the 28th. And then I was taken to the Edmonton remand on the Friday. And then they have like a video court, so ironic, from the prison on Monday. And the psychiatrist sort of arranged to have me released on my own recognizance because he'd seen my file, right? He's like, this guy doesn't have a history of mental illness, certainly no weapons, none of that. But yeah, so he kind of pulled some strings. So that's twice in 6 weeks that I've been just kind of in and out of jail.
Because of bureaucracy or
I still don't know. All I know is the reason for one, because I still have the receipt for the ticket, and the reason for the other, because I got the disclosure, I got the police statements, because I had to defend myself or hire a lawyer. So he arranged to have me released, but I still had to see a doctor. I hadn't been back to work yet, right? And I had to meet like a first appearance in court. I had to meet a parole officer. I had to do all of these things at a time that was not ideal, if there ever was one. And I haven't been working, right? Because I haven't had time to get back to work since I've been doing all this stuff. So I go to the Hayes Medical Clinic, and without asking me many questions, all of a sudden I walked out of there with like forms for social assistance. because I hadn't been back to work. I was diagnosed with PTSD, not from a condition before the concussion. They didn't even document the looks of me when I walked in there. Like, I was beat up, and but they did document PTSD, and they did that to the Alberta Ministry of Social Services and Poverty Reduction. In the meantime, I was just finishing up with the EI that I had for the course, and I reported to my parole officer. She knew where I was. I bussed on a Greyhound back and forth between Prince George, because Dad, he's like dying, and it was like a home care thing. So I'm like carrying him to the bathroom and stuff like that, trying to keep him out of the hospice, and having to bus back to Edmonton to say why I shouldn't be like criminally prosecuted in addition to this 30-day psychiatric assessment. So that was sort of, I got the disclosure in November, and Dad died on December 22nd, 2016. And I just outwitted the Crown prosecutors at their own game by holding him to a schedule. I went in there, I pled not guilty. I think that they might have just kind of been confused about the same file number, name, sentence, 30 days. I think it's almost like, you know how when you get a phone call from a telemarketer and you just know that they're reading from a script. Well, I think that's the way these traffic debts are supposed to play out, right? And so when that wound up not happening, it was just so out of the normal. In the meantime, I'm still accused of a crime. So it's not like I can go around complaining, right? Giving statements and stuff. So I hired a lawyer for a civil suit against the RCMP, just for the arrest. I mean, I used to work there. I installed the camera they were using. I installed the DVR bank that had the records on it, and I had an AGLC file number and social insurance number, employment history at the Baccarat Casino with the guy I wrote the note to. Seemed pretty open and shut. So my premise was there's no way that this is going to like stick in court, because it was never intended to. It was intended to remedy the number of hours that John McCowchick was in prison to account for a traffic ticket that had been paid twice.
How would the traffic ticket been paid twice?
Well, with the books, right? So they would have an intake. They did 2 intakes, essentially, right? And so what had happened was that loaner phone that I had gotten in between, after the one arrest, my telephone had been tracked while it was getting repaired. And I think that it was that tracking absence or flag or whatever that prompted the dangerous offender thing. Because who knows what they do with those SIM cards, with the RFID in the phone, right? When it's in a shop for repair. In the meantime, I'm walking around with maybe a cohort, maybe you switch phones, this phone's here, this one's here. One police agency is just trying to collect their share of the revenue for the fine that's been paid. And the other one is seeing the same warrant popping up. And then it was this Alberta Free Energy Association link on my Facebook, which was the only thing I really had on there, that allowed him to make the connection to prosecute me. to settle the books because they'd already arrested me. What do you do with that guy, right? So they withdrew the charge after 4 court appearances on November 22nd. All I did was I went in there with my notepad and my disclosure and walked up to the Crown prosecutor. I said, these are going to be my arguments. And they're like, yeah, we can't, this case isn't without complexity, word for word. We're going to have to delay till June. They wanted to delay it another year. And the judge was having none of it because all I had to do was point at my schedule and say, look, I was here, I pled. This trial has been delayed once already. I've been going to my parole and I'm ready to argue the case. I mean, that's why I'm here. And so I kind of took the Crown prosecutor out of their playbook with that, right? Because they're not used to someone defending themselves. They're not used to needing to collect information. They're used to having everything that they need to fill their order. And so I didn't even get to argue the case, but I did have the disclosure, which meant that I had all the police statements. It means that I had all the file numbers. I had all the conversations that had happened, all of the ins and outs, evidence list, all of it, of what they were going to use to prosecute me for the original incident, for the original premise of a guy with weapons and some sort of terrorist motivation. So their statements were all dated once those officers came back on shift. And so their statements were out of time with the eventuality of the psychiatric assessment thing. So by the time I got the disclosure, it's already too late. You can only enter those things in CPIC sort of one time. And so I've got it all. I don't even need to say anything. I can just give the stack of the police officer's own documents and let it speak for itself. But I went out and got a lawyer. It cost me $1,500 to do up a statement of claim, and that was done 2017. And it was like April of 2017 March 2017 that I got back to work, because after Dad died at Christmas, I actually came back to Edmonton right after Christmas. I held on to my apartment, and I was looking to get back to work. And I'd just been back. I think there were 2 paychecks that I had just been back to work. And I was driving back from Fort McMurray on, it would have been April 21st of 2017. And I filed that lawsuit on the 2nd of April after I received the statement of defense the 2nd of April. The process for it is you kind of, in dealing with the RCMP, you have to submit this civil suit again into the Attorney General of Canada. They file a statement of defense. And that in turn gets sort of amalgamated into a file at the Queen's Bench, the civil litigation part. And the lawsuit itself, just because that's these lawyers' scripts, right? And don't forget, he wasn't going to represent me. I just had him draft up the claim statement. And that was sort of the last of what I had left after, not working, being away, trying to hold my apartment, and having to go see a psychiatrist. And then having to go see a psychiatrist, because I was pretty traumatized at that point, right? So when the first time I went to the psychiatrist, they said, you can't work for 3 months. So it was in that time, so I've been released from prison. It was November. Yeah, and I got the stop work order late that summer at some point during the defense. And so it wasn't immediately that I got to go back to work as an electrician at PM. And don't forget, they haven't seen me since like would have been April, May of 2016, really. Travis, my boss, had come and bailed me out of jail. Then they found out that I'd been put in jail again. They got this letter landing on their desk from the Alberta government saying this guy can't work, psycho. He's accused of a criminal offense now. And his dad's died. And they only knew the last part from me. In the meantime, I'd withdrawn from school. I never really got to spend the last of that summer with my father. But I was there in November, and so it was then that we got him into the hospice. Prince George Hospice Society is an amazing place, by the way. It's kind of a private organization sort of thing. It's community funded. Exactly the kind of thing my dad liked. Kind of like he liked my Alberta Free Energy Association idea. And so I just got back to work. I've been coming back from Fort McMurray, and we stopped at a roadside check because one of the back doors was kind of swinging open a crack. Driving a big Mercedes Sprinter, I got all my power tools in there. They held onto it. You know how you kind of get your fleet truck, right? Well, that Sprinter was mine. Last job I'd done before that, I built a lot of gas stations. I guess that's what I did. Built a co-op car lot. Was the last job that I'd done in Sherwood Park. Just before that, going back into that course. But officer runs a CPIC check on my name. Winds up seizing the vehicle. 30 days. Driving while unauthorized. Also writes up a ticket for a late registration on that vehicle. It was insured, but since I've been away, they hadn't changed the card in there. And this is on Highway 43, right in between Boyle. Well, it was near Boyle, Alberta, and Edmonton. It's about an hour and a half drive. Got this apprentice with me, and sees the vehicle, sees my tools. We'd just been like living out of a hotel for a week. It was Friday, and you'll have to deal with it on the 7th of June for first appearance for traffic violation. And so that was the end of my job, PM Electric. They can't touch their own vehicle for 30 days. They